Okay, hello everybody. Good morning, good morning. I hope you're feeling good. MJBiz is getting started, and this panel is getting started. We will not be talking about policy or numbers, but we will be talking about business and media and PR and culture. So let's jump right into it. I'm DeAngelo. This is my brother Steve DeAngelo. We have Mishka and Slava Ashbel, the Ashbel brothers. All right. The Ashbel brothers have MMD dispensaries, several locations in more than one state. They also have a fabulous reality TV show called High Hopes on Hulu right now, produced by Jimmy Kimmel. Some of you may know it. And of course, my brother and I had the very first reality TV show ever about a cannabis company called Weed Wars. Some of you may have seen Weed Wars. Anybody? All right. Okay, I got my questions here. I have to bring them up so I don't forget them. All right. So one of the things that when we were preparing this panel that was really incredible was the very first thing you said to us, Slava, because we watched each other's shows. So my brother and I watched your show, and then you watched our show, and I had to send you a link because it's kind of hard to find Weed Wars right now. And the first thing you said was every cannabis entrepreneur should watch these shows.
Absolutely.
So why? Why do you think it's important for everybody in this business to watch these two reality TV shows?
Well, because I think a lot of things that were on your show still hold true. Like for example, you know, when the sales, when you're looking at the sales reports and you're saying the sales are down, you know, there's still a few basic things that you look at in the retail environment. Is you look at customer service and you're looking at your menu and your selection of products. Those are the two things that still hold true to this day. Which is why I think it's super important for anybody that wants to be especially in the retail side of things to know.
Yeah, I would jump in there. I think, you know, Weed Wars was shot 12 years ago, and High Hopes too. And even though our landscape is dramatically different from day to day in the cannabis space, and if you guys think it's wild now, I dare you to put on our 2006 shoes and go through what we went through then. But you know, Weed Wars was shot as like a dramatic docu-series, where High Hopes was shot as a comedic one. And you know, Weed Wars goes through like a lot of the challenges of, you know, that retail operators face every day. 280E, you know, loss prevention. You've got the staffing issues, where High Hopes is more of the comedic side of things, but really a lot of the same principles hold true from 12 years ago to today. You know, it's about customer acquisition. It's about inventory controls. It's about running good customer service for your retail operations. Nothing replaces good customer service. So I think if you're getting into the cannabis space, especially the retail cannabis space, and you're new, you should watch the shows. And it's a shameless plug. So.
I mean, well, look, it takes about 5 hours to binge watch the two shows, okay? But Steve, why should entrepreneurs spend 5 hours watching these shows? Why would that be good for people?
Well, you know, I think that the trajectory of these shows is really interesting. They were filmed at two very different times in the history of the industry, but there's these themes that just run through it. And yeah, retail is quite simple, but it's also about making this emotional bond with the people who are coming into your shop. And understanding that shop is also kind of a realm of theater. It's a realm for presenting ideas to people. And so what comes through for me when I look at these shows is this connection, this understanding, this deep bond with the people who are coming into the dispensaries. And I think that it flows out of the founder's relationship with the plant. relationship with the plant. These days, there's a lot of cannabis executives who kind of proudly talk about the fact that they don't consume the plant. That's not the case with us.
No, not at all. We're going to get to that in a minute. Are we high right now? Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about public communication, because that's really what reality TV shows are, right? We're communicating our story to the public, and it's not just our personal story, it's the story of our business. And Steve, you, in 05, 06, when we first started Harborside, you had a very unique vision for how you were going to do media, and could you share with everybody what that vision was, why it was the way it was, and did the strategy work? Because Weed Wars was just one part of sort of a much bigger story of how you used media to fulfill the mission. Could you talk about that journey?
Sure. So there were really two main vectors that led us to embrace really a large public image and to invite the public into what we were doing. One of them was that when we first opened, the city of Oakland prohibited us from advertising in any way, shape, or form. So we had this new dispensary. We wanted to let people know that we were there, and we couldn't advertise. And so there was no prohibition on publicity, and so we leaned into publicity just as a way of customer acquisition, although in those days it was patient acquisition. So that was one vector. The other was the mission. When we opened Harborside, we didn't have an exit plan. We had a mission plan, and it was a simple mission, and that was to legalize cannabis. And we, in furtherance of that mission, we wanted to demonstrate to the world that cannabis could be distributed in a way that brought benefits to communities and not harms. And so we are all about creating this model that would be a model of legitimacy, for want of a better word. And then if you create a model, you really need to show it. That's the whole point of creating a model. So we are one of the very first cannabis dispensaries that welcomed the media in, and Weed Wars was one part of that. But I gave literally dozens of interviews to news media, everybody from CNN to Bill O'Reilly and Fox to all of our local newspapers. And so we were really the first people who were willing to do that. Every other dispensary was turning away the news media at that time. And it was all about demonstrating to the world that this was a good plan, not an evil plan.
It was really fun for me as your brother to see all this happen. And before we get to that, were you always really good at media? Is it something you were always good at? Because there's a lot of people I think are nervous about doing media, and because they don't feel like they have that skill set, right? So was that something God just gave you, or was it something you had to develop?
Well, I think God just gave me an appetite for it, or more properly put, in my spiritual system, God just gave me an appetite for it. But so I always saw the camera as a friend and not an enemy to me. But it's a skill that you need to develop over time, and it took me a long time to be really comfortable in front of the camera, and I had to work at it. And so for many, many, many years, until actually quite recently, before I made a public appearance where I was giving a speech or giving a talk, I would be up in my hotel room in front of a mirror for 2 or 3 hours, running through the speech time and time again, so that I nailed it, so that I got it right. The good news is that over time that work pays off, and so now I need to have some kind of idea of what I'm going to talk about, but I don't need to know every single word before I get on stage.
I did about 2 hours of rehearsal in my hotel room this morning, so I'm still doing that. Those guys probably did too, right? We were up at like 5 in the morning doing push-ups and getting ready.
I was in the bathroom 20 minutes ago.
Exactly, right? But what was really, when you do get good at it, what was fun for me was, because it's 06, 07, and like all these media people are coming into Harborside and they want to talk to Steve and they want to learn about it, and we're opening, and CNN is showing up and huge reporters are showing up, and they're like poking at him, right? They're poking at him and with this prohibitionist stuff and the skepticism and the stigma. And he would just slay it. He would slay them and destroy them, you know? And I'm like going, yeah, bro, yeah. It was so much fun to watch. And it's not just like the ego part of it, right? We were bringing the plant out of the shadows and into the light. And so even today, 2024, with high hopes, we're doing the same thing. You guys are doing the same thing. When we see your staff doing what your staff does, it's the same thing, right? We're bringing cannabis out of the shadows and into the light. And it's a good segue into my next question for the brothers. You know, you consume a lot of weed on your show.
Yes.
And you do it with your staff. And so, like, where does the love of cannabis and the plant live in your leadership matrix? And should entrepreneurs be loud and proud with stoner culture, or should they cover it up and hide from it?
Okay, well, I mean, first, I'd like to congratulate everybody in this room. Congratulations. You are at the biggest cannabis trade show on the planet, okay? There's 20,000 attendants. There's 1,400 exhibitors. There's 200 speakers. Like it or not, you are out of the cannabis closet, okay? Embrace it. Live it. You know, live that shit. You know, you're here. We all worked really hard to get to this point right here, and we should be proud of what we've done.
Yeah.
This is not easy, and you all deserve a round of applause. You should tell the story.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd like to thank Steve and Andrew for literally opening a door for all of this to happen, to be honest with you, and actually not shying away from media, because when we were opening our first dispensary, also in 2006, you know, we visited your dispensary and it blew our minds.
Holy cow.
But our, you know, our rule after that was we're not doing any media. We didn't even have a sign, a building sign for our dispensaries, you know, for the first year, because we were, you know, back then we were afraid to get arrested, to go to jail. So what you did was you know, extremely brave, and it was all because of the love of the plant, just like what we have today. You know, I mean, you know, love of the plant actually guides everything else in our situation, and it's important it's important to be proud of cannabis. You know, for example, you know, when we did the show, I was afraid, you know, with my kids going to school, I was kind of nervous as to, you know, now, you know, their dad's going to be on national TV, and what are some of the things that people are going to say in school, or, you know, so I was preparing them, and, you know, I said, you know, guys, your dad's going to be on TV, you know, where, you know, some people might say things, you know, kind of preparing them, and then after the show came out, I took my kids to school one day, dropped them off, and the dean of the school comes up and he said, "Hey Steve, you know what, congratulations on the show. You know, me and my wife actually watch it on the weekends. It's our, you know, guilty pleasure." So the dean of the school actually congratulated me, and somehow now I'm like the you know, the school consultant for, you know, the teachers when they want some edibles, or
they don't
where their elbow is hurting or something like that. So yeah.
I love that story because it's a journey, right?
Yeah.
You have this Stigma, even us, we have this stigma that prohibition, 50, 100 years of prohibition is just over and over put in us. And even us as owners, operators, afraid to put a sign on the door, afraid to talk to our children, afraid to talk to the teachers, and then magic happens, right?
Yeah.
Then magic happens, and they probably didn't share the fact with you that they might have been smoking a joint while they were having that guilty pleasure, okay, watching your show. But this is why it's so important to be proud, right? One of my favorite scenes in your show is when you're developing your brand, your in-house brand, and you bring Uriel and Freddie, two of your staff members, into HQ, and you're taking bong hits, and you have all the different strains from all the different growers, and you're doing it together, and and you're talking and debating about it, and you could really see that this was an integral part of your business, okay? And it wasn't, and you were like taking bong rips with your staff, okay? How many people do that, all right?
People don't take bong rips with their staff?
Yeah, for us it's very natural, but we're in this California bubble. You get outside of the California bubble and it's a very different story, right?
Well, at Harborside, in the staff break room, we had vaporizers that were equipped there, right? Because all of our staff was medical cannabis patients, and by law, and we weren't going to prevent them from using their medicine. Now, we did have impairment tests, and if people were too stoned to do their job, they were sent home. And if they got sent home 3 times, they were terminated. So we had professional standards. You guys had
I'm
professional
realizing you might have fired me.
Right, Well, look, we had to, with 1,000, 1,200 people coming in, people had to be on their toes.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it was back then. You cannot deny patients their medicine, and all your employees are actual patients. Now, the difference is you're legally not allowed to consume on site unless you have a consumption space. So, it kind of falls back on, employees being cognitive enough to perform their tasks. So you do,
Impairment test. Right? Yeah. Can you walk a straight line? Can you stand on one foot? Yeah. Yeah, it's very important. So there's this like balance that has to be struck, right? Because we're here to serve the public, but we also love the plant, and we're also patients, all of us. And so it's an integration, I think. And we're all professionals, right? So you can do it. All right, we're going to move a little bit closer into the present. Weed Wars was 14, 15 years ago. And High Hopes was shot 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And all of you in this industry, we all know 6 months or a year is like 5 years in the normal industry. So like 15 years is like 50 years in the normal industry, and 3 years is like 20 years in the normal industry. So let's talk about where is Harborside Health Center today, Steve, and then we'll get to MMD.
Well, Harborside Health Center today is a part of a larger conglomerate called State House, which just went into receivership. And the story there, really goes back to the pioneering role that Harborside played. And our journey with investors began in 2014, way earlier than most folks were looking at the situation when the city of San Jose required us to become vertically integrated, to grow everything that we sold in the dispensary or lose the license. And furthermore, that grow had to either be in the city of San Jose or an adjacent county. Well, an adjacent county was Monterey County, which had a long kind of dormant industry of greenhouse cultivation. So we needed to acquire and develop a cultivation cultivation facility, and that led us to investors. And in those days, the investors who were interested in cannabis were kind of high risk people who were looking for a high return. And when we went into that deal, we had some liabilities from an investor point of view. We had been engaged in years and years of struggle with the federal government around two major issues. One, 280E taxes, and the second, in 2011, they started trying to seize the properties of every medical cannabis company in California, and they succeeded in closing down 600 of them. So until they got to Harborside, and that was the last one that they managed to close with those tactics. But we had spent millions of dollars on legal fees in those battles, and we had a contingent liability with the IRS of $29.3 million. So when the investors came in, they were able to leverage those issues into eventually a majority position in the company. And once they got that majority position, they got rid of all of the founders. They fired me. They terminated Andrew's contract. They got rid of the CEO that we were working with and removed all of our family members from the board. Then they went out and borrowed $118 million, which they blew through in 2 years and somehow still couldn't put together a profit-making company. So that's the Harborside receivership story in a nutshell. Unfortunately, we thought we were welcoming partners into our business, and they turned out to be predators.
Powerful lessons, and I'll just put a cherry on top of that by saying Steve and I are trying to get Harborside back right now. So, and if any of you want to help with that, come talk to us. So, how about you guys and MMD? What's happening the last 3 years?
That's not easy to follow. Steve and Andrew, just to let you guys know.
Well, yeah, but your story's a little happier, so let's get the vibe.
Yeah. Listen, the cannabis industry has been very turbulent, especially in California over the last couple of years, right? Since we shot the show, there's been tremendous change. Where we thought we were going to be taking over the world, we had to kind of take a step back, reassess our positions from a growth perspective, and make like the physically responsible decisions for the company in order to survive and move forward. Since then, me and Steve are the active CEOs of the company now. I think it's important.
You had a CEO we met on the show, right?
CEO, and he's a good dude. He's off doing his own thing, but I think we learned a lot through that process. I think when hiring C-suite staff, you really have to kind of understand that there's a few things. There's a vision, and then there's a plan, and then there's an execution. If you're the owner and you're not responsible for that vision, and you let somebody else start to take that vision, and it turns into their vision, when the car crashes and you're not driving it, you can't really be upset about it anymore. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that as an owner, you hold autonomy and you hold true to your vision, and you tell your C-suite operators what to do with your vision, not the other way around. And it's so easy to get into that bubble, and we did the same thing. We let somebody else kind of lead our ship until it got to the point where it's like, hey, this is our business and we got to do it. And
we're about to hit an iceberg. We better take the ship back, right?
I mean, it's important to have structure. It's important to have business sense, but the most important thing is your vision for your business. You let people that are in the office, put the structure to your vision and make sure that your vision is followed every single day. I mean, that's one lesson that we've learned, from this. I mean, since the show, to go back to that question, we've opened 2 more more stores. We've opened Redwood City location and our first
Awesome.
East Coast location, New Jersey City. And MMD's still expanding, and we're just doing it at our own pace.
Yeah.
And,
Did I hear New Jersey?
You did
Yes.
hear New Jersey.
Jersey City.
New Jersey. First
All
East
right.
Coast MMD location. So
MMD expanding out of California. That's intentional, I assume.
Yes. Absolutely. I hope so.
The great race out of California has happened, but you're still in California. How many
Yeah.
shops now?
We have 5 locations in California and 1 location in New Jersey at the moment.
Okay, and what about your brand? That the in-house brand that we learned about on the show.
Little Matron. Little Matron is still around. It's a give back brand. We bring that out like during like holiday or anytime we do something with our nonprofit partners. We're partnered with the ALS Network, which is an amazing organization. So we bring it out like seasonally, and it does well kind of every single time people come in from the show, always looking for Little Matron. But we use it as essentially a give back brand. And the cast, we're all still friends. A lot of them still work there. Freddie's back in Michigan with his family. We talked to him the other day. We miss him dearly. But we're doing good. It's
What
an
about
exciting
season
time.
2? Is season 2 going to happen? Do we know?
we're working on season 2. Yes.
We have high hopes.
We have high hopes.
High hopes for season 2. Yeah, we will all be sharing that hope that you get that season 2 so that Steve and I can make the cameo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, what about the DeAngelo brothers? What are they up to now that we're not with Harborside anymore?
Well, as you know, the DeAngelo brothers like to be on the frontiers of cannabis, so we have a couple of interesting projects in that vein. One is a cruise project called Real Roots Cruise. Come spend 7 days with us and our good friend First Month out on the high seas. We have a senior-focused brand called Silver, cannabis by seniors for seniors.
Not quite senior, but almost senior. Yes, and we also are advising other entrepreneurs on how to build their businesses. We have a little advisory thing going on, and we're also producing films and continuing to tell the story. We have a wonderful film called American Hemp Farmer with our buddy Doug Fine. He's all about growing hemp for food and food security. So hemp is a whole nother subject I'm sure we'll be talking about on lots of panels today. And this has just been really wonderful to be up here with you guys. Is there anything, what about the future of MMD? Is any more Jersey is going to be a thing, or?
Hopefully, yes. We're always going for new licenses, new municipalities, always looking into expanding our company, absolutely.
And it's really hard to go 3,000 miles away. We were talking in the green room. I was like, you got to have a strong GM. And then you told me the story of, well.
Yeah. We actually decided to start training somebody up at our in-house staff to move to the East Coast. She started as a front desk receptionist, then she was a bud tender, inventory manager, assistant manager at one of our high volume locations. Then we turned her into a GM, and then we moved her out to New Jersey. At MMD, we really prefer to promote within and not just hire somebody with like a fancy resume, just because number one, it fills your heart a little bit more when you see somebody coming from a position and moving on up, and there's a trust factor. Like the biggest part is community, I think, for us, and the community that we get to build.
So I just want to key in on 2 words here that we heard, right? And one of them is heart, and the other is autonomy. And I think that they're linked, and it's so important. If you are a cannabis entrepreneur, you have your own company, and you love cannabis, you have heart, and you use the lessons that the plant teaches you, taught you in your business, maintain your autonomy. Do not give it up under any circumstances. It is your most valuable business asset.
Yes. And that's a great way to wrap up the panel. You are the expert. Doesn't mean you don't need other experts, but you are the experts. Trust yourself. All right, and that's what we've all learned in this journey, and that's the big lesson that we have for you. And we have no more time left. That's the end of our panel. We are starting the show, so everybody get ready to hit the showroom. And thank you all for showing up today. And feel free to talk to any of us after this panel. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, guys,